Hey guys, what's up? My name's Matt Brown and this here is Raven. We're going to be doing a little creative hair color placement for you guys today, as well as some razor cutting. So if you'd like to see some of that stuff, just stay tuned.
All right, so here we are. We're working with the Color XG with our formulation here today. When Raven and I were discussing what to do with her hair color, she said, I want to go darker, but I definitely still want to see some vibrancy. So we went with 4,4R, equal parts with 4RV and 20 volume for our first formula. Our second formula was that 4RV mixed together with 6V and 20 volume. So you see here we're going through with a split color, or a rendition of a split placement. On the right hand side is going to be where we start with Formula 1, working with all panels that are below the parietal ridge. The left hand side is going to be Formula 2. We're going to switch things up in a little bit, but we'll talk about that more as we go. The main thing I wanted to just show here is that the way I preferred to work through this application to make sure I had the best saturation that I could in the time that we had was to go through all the sections as I normally would, with focus primarily being from the root to the line of demarcation. That would ensure that I had good saturation for everything that previously had been regrown. That way I could come back through a little bit more haphazardly, just kind of get it on there, working that color through. So here we are working through the top now. What we've done is we've switched. Now the left hand side has Formula 1. The right hand side is going to have Formula 2. Just to kind of give us a little bit of variation. The end result here isn't really about drastic changes in hair color. It's more of a subtlety, because we are still living in those reds and those subtle violets. The RV series really is one of my favorite shades in all of our color lines, just because of its versatility. So here we are, we're getting started on segmenting for the haircut. As you can see, parting away the hair that's above the parietal ridge, just because we're going to work with that a little bit later. We're going to be starting this haircut down in the nape. So you'll see here another little division line working from the crown down to the occipital bone. Just a little tip that I like to work with when I'm going through and segmenting is just combing the hair the same direction until you get zero resistance. That way everything gets nice and clean and easier to create those cleaner partings when you're working in anything really. So going in with a plie razor. Our sections today are going to be starting off diagonal. Big thing for me with working with a razor here is making sure that we are not getting so focused on exact lines, but more so about balance. So you see a lot of what I do through here is more so like kind of a closed edge, softer cut, visual approach to everything. I'm not so focused on getting an exact line, but I know that I want to see this kind of fall short to long, back to front. So I'm using a little bit of backwards over direction, maybe just slightly pulling the section back to its previous. Mostly taking everything, kind of locking things back down in the nape, and letting the cutting action of the razor create most of the texture as we work through the outline. And that's mainly what we wanted to see here with Raven's haircut. Raven's hair texture, if you can't see, is the straight to wavy, kind of fine to medium, moderate density. So working with a razor to establish an outline here is one of my favorite ways to maintain density while also creating a lot of separation through the ends. So you can see I used a diagonal back section here, but I'm not creating a cutting line that mirrors that. The reason for the diagonal back section, I can actually say I picked this one up from DJ Muldoon. It's a way to establish an outline using all of those hairs that are towards the hairline, from the front of the hairline all the way towards the nape, allowing that all to fall down so that you can see everything in its true perimeter. And just kind of coming through here and etching in some more of those lengths. Our end goal here was essentially the equivalent of like a shag, but kind of like a bob length, in that chin bob length. We come through here with a little bit more of a vertical approach to the razor, getting in a little bit deeper so that we can create more separation. As I was saying earlier, the main goal here is to create more of a shattered texture as we're working through the temple, occipital, nape region of the haircut. So we're working through on the right-hand side of the haircut. You can see that diagonal back section. We're using that to help us once again in establishing the lengths throughout this side. Another way that you might do this in typical settings is doing horizontal sections. You could do either way, whichever one you're more comfortable with. I find for me, if I feel confident in my cutting line, a diagonal back section is just the way to go to save time and have a little bit more control so that I'm not guessing on that front length. So we're switching out razor for scissors. Working with vertical sections. Vertical sections do the best at removing weight. We're working with the wet relationship of a haircut. Keeping those sections nice and tidy. And you'll see here as we reach the corner of the hairline, just behind the massoid process, we're switching things up a little bit. Rather than working with a stationary guide, we're going to switch to, rather than working with a moving guide, we're switching to a stationary guide. That way we can create a little bit more of a drastic fall off and keep that weight falling forward. I find that when I'm working on the right hand side versus the left and that kind of technique, I like to switch my hand position up a little bit just to make things a little bit easier on my shoulders. But anyway, getting things going towards the top of the haircut here, creating that connecting point from what we just cut, and using a center section running from the crown to the front of the hairline. You kind of create a little north star so I can go back in with vertical sections going from that center section down towards the previously cut hair. And it works perfectly in a connect the dots kind of situation. That way everything is very much just take this hair, pull it all the way back, nice and high, and connect those dots. Kind of steps us into a little bit of condensed hair cutting. I wanted to start our style off with the first product from Paul Mitchell that I ever used. It's a sculpting foam. Get a little bit of that coconut fragrance in there, create a little bit of memory in the end result. So using a combination or an adaptation of a couple of techniques, if you're familiar with what we teach in some of our Paul Mitchell schools. This is adapted from the flat wrap and the directional pre-dry methods. Going back and forth, focus on the root and the mid shaft. That way when you come in to leaf and bevel and polish those ends a bit, you don't have to focus so much on the root. I wanted to use our Neuro Smooth here because I knew that it could heat up really quickly and get so hot in a little bit of a different fashion. So I'm just coming through here and using those beveled edges to give the hair a little bit of a to and fro wiggle, as it were, going to give that self-induced wavy hair today. Raven's not one for super straight hairstyles, so I wanted to give her a little bit of texture to play with. So here's our end result. I hope you love it.
Hey guys, what's up?